Well, hi again, Mr. Bleeker here. Now that we've studied internal and external male and female reproductive anatomy, let's put this all together and look at the reproductive cycle as a whole. We'll start with male aspects, we'll look at female aspects, and then we'll look at the zygote and see how it tries to implant in the uterus. So, the idea with internal fertilization is to develop quality offspring and to bring them to term internally. It's a little bit different, of course, than what fish would do, where they practice external fertilization, but only 1 in 100 of the offspring survive. So this is just a quality strategy. That's the idea. Fewer offspring, higher quality care. So if we zoom in a little bit on where sperm come from, of course they're produced in the testes, but we'll look a little bit more about that. Now, the scrotal sac is external because it keeps the testes at a lower temperature. And if we look at the production of sperm in the testicle here, there's all these what are known as seminiferous tubules. Now, in high school, we don't look at this in as much detail as we would in college or university, but this is a process called spermatogenesis. As the sperm are produced, they're being stored, of course, in the epididymis. Now, if too many sperm are produced, of course, there is some absorption that can happen here. And there can be some male reproductive issues where the body's reabsorbing sperm and how many sperm survive and come to term. There can be some issues around fertility there. Okay, so during ejaculation, the sperm will leave via the vas deferens, and they will begin to sort of take a turn here past the bladder, and they will make sort of a visit to the seminal vesicles. Now, the seminal vesicles, their job is to supply an alkaline fluid that also has a sugary material to it, packing a lunch for the sperm and protecting them from the acidic nature of the female environment that is to come. So sperm really don't make up that much of what we call semen or seminal fluid. In fact, the seminal vesicle kicks in a whole bunch of fluid, and as we move next to the prostate gland, what you'll find is the prostate gland itself will secrete, its secretions are slightly alkaline as well, which adds to the volume of seminal fluid. Now, stimulation of the penis is nervous in nature. These corpus cavernosa here, these fill with blood. At this point, you have the angularity correct for an ejaculation. And at this point, the seminal fluid is passing out of the male's body into the female. And notice that it's delivered very close via the vagina to the cervical opening right here. In some cases, just an interesting point, some women have what's called a tipped cervix, and that can make it hard in some cases to become pregnant. It's hard for the sperm to actually enter the uterine area. It's called a tipped uterus. Now, if we kind of zoom out for a second, we look at the female aspect of this. As the sperm are entering, of course, they're looking for an egg to fertilize. Sorry there. They're swimming uphill in the uterus, and one thing you need to understand is they're trying to get to the fallopian tubes. It's a good thing they're in seminal fluid that's alkaline right here because the female reproductive system is very acidic, and as the sperm is traveling through, that acidic environment, of course, kills many of them. Now, here's where conception is going to happen, the release of the egg. Now, in this case, we'll look at one egg, right? We're not looking at identical twins or fraternal twins here. So about day 14, egg is released from the follicle. The fimbriae, as I said, waft it in, and the egg begins to take a journey here, but has a little bit of help. So now you have about 24 hours. That egg needs to be fertilized or it will degenerate and the woman will start to enter her reproductive phase again to go through another menstrual period. So here's a nice zoom of the cilia in the fallopian tube as they waft the egg along, sort of pulsing it down. Now notice the egg is dividing, right? The zygote itself is going through it's going from one cell to 2 to 4 to 8 to 16 as it begins to become an organism. Now, the uterine lining's been built up by the mother's hormones, in particular estrogen. And remember that the corpus luteum is sending a signal back to the brain to maintain all this, to not send, really, to not send another egg. We don't want any more follicle stimulating hormone or luteinizing hormone. We've got to give this egg a fighting chance. So it'll tumble down and implant on the uterine lining. Now, if we have successful implantation, we'll get the development of a placenta. Now, the placenta becomes extremely important because it will secrete high levels of estrogen and progesterone and keep the uterus in this phase. Now, if that doesn't happen, if the egg can't implant, and well, the first thing it does is it sends a signal to maintain the corpus luteum for a little while until the the entire placenta develops. If the corpus luteum is maintained for a little while, it gives this organism a chance to grow its placenta, and then the hormones secreted by the placenta will keep the uterus in its ripe state. If that doesn't happen, if the egg can't attach, then what happens is a typical menstrual cycle will occur, and the egg is lost alongside the tissue fluid and blood, and it's gone. And these kind of things happen all the time. The egg just didn't make it, it just didn't implant. So when you look at the reproductive cycle, it can start as, I mean, there's exceptions with it starting before the age of 10, of course, but we're talking about averages here, where it can kick in around the age 10 to 14 and ends typically, I'll just say typically around 50 years of age. Although there have been mothers that have had, well, have born children at ages in excess of this. But that's it. That's the reproductive cycle. Nice overview of everything. Thanks for listening, and have a good one.